Hi everyone, and welcome to After Dark Analysis. This episode's essentially going to be a hybrid between tropes that need to die and why is this a thing. We're going to be focusing on the stereotypical stupid decisions made in a horror film. If you follow this channel on Facebook or Twitter, you would see that I put up a poll asking what people want me to talk about. This was by far one of the most requested things and has been probably one of the biggest grievances most people I know have with horror, and that is stupid decisions. I think most of us have seen like Scary Movie or something like that and seen the parody of, oh, there's a fork in the road, one is to safety, one is to certain death, and the girl obviously runs to certain death. Now, to understand why filmmakers use this one so much, we kind of need to look at us as a species. When humans are afraid, we have what is referred to as a fight or flight response. It's pretty telling as to what it is. Either you're gonna fight whatever's scaring you, or you're gonna run away from it as fast as you can to alleviate the threat. During this time, you're probably working mostly on impulse and not using your intelligence or your brain or your knowledge of the world as it is because you're too terrified to even think. Now, I'm gonna make a wild assumption here and assume robots aren't listening to this channel. So you probably experienced some form of stress in your life, and you probably realize it wasn't the best grounds for decision making. Might not have been life-threatening, but it was probably impairing your judgment and making you do things that you looked back at later and went, why in the world did I do that? That was really dumb of me. Why did I do that? I've been there, I'll totally admit to it. No judgment, just be honest here. So when a character in a horror film is exposed to a life-threatening kind of issue, it makes sense that they wouldn't make the best decision. Sometimes when this fear response was used well was in The Strangers, when they were held up in a closet trying to get away from their attackers and the people that wanted to invade their home, and somebody came to the door of the closet that they were in and they just shot without even looking. It turns out it was a friend coming to rescue them. A similar event happens in the movie Inside. Sarah is barricaded in a bathroom hiding from her attacker with a knitting needle in her hand, which I don't know if you've ever seen a knitting needle, but they're not horribly sharp, but if you put enough force behind it, you could probably do some damage. She ends up stabbing her own mother in the neck, which again was an attempt to rescue her because she realized the woman in Sarah's home, she didn't know, and she was claiming to be Sarah, which couldn't be true because we're going to assume she wasn't a terrible mother and knew what her own daughter looked like. Both of these events show a very primal, knee-jerk reactionary response. The people involved in these situations, we can assume were not trained for combat. They don't have that background. It wouldn't make sense for them to know this. So, being a normal human being with normal life experiences, they went, hey, somebody's trying to attack me. Attack. The precious seconds it would have taken for their brain to realize, oh, this is a friend, they're coming to rescue me. Had that been the attacker, they would have been dead. Behavior like this is where phrases like shoot first and ask questions later come from. We just react on instinct. And both of these scenes showed that kind of behavior in a logical fashion. It also aided in the horror because both of these were home invasion based. Both of them were isolated, not feeling like they could get help. They got help, and they killed it, making the situation much more desperate and much more sad. Because now, not only are they dealing with the stress of the possible home invasion, they're dealing with the grief and the guilt of they've just killed somebody that was important to them. But with that being said, and those solid examples being given, there are times where it is just completely and utterly obnoxious, and I totally get the fan and the non-horror fan hatred for it. The most infuriating shot seems to be when you have somebody who's in a house being chased, they run past a landing with a door to the outside to run upstairs. Now, tactically speaking, most people's houses, if you get upstairs, there's not a whole lot of ways to get down. Yeah, you can shimmy off a roof, or maybe there's an awning, but that's way more complicated than just opening a flippin' door. A few films have tried to deal with this in a more logical fashion to kind of curb the fan hatred towards it, where our protagonist will try and escape through a door, but the door is either blocked in such a way that they can't get out, or there's another killer outside, or the killer has gone around to the outside. Because they assume, hey, this person's probably going to try and use the door. Which in those instances, it does take away the whole, oh, somebody was doing something really, really stupid, and turns it into a, oh, the killer was just good enough to anticipate their motion. Another example of filmmakers trying to work with this hatred and try to make it make more sense is in the film You're Next. When Erin realizes they're under attack by potential home invaders, she begins to set up traps. Since setting traps in horror films, especially how quickly it happened, kind of is a weird thing, the audience was kind of going, okay, so you're setting up traps. Are you in on it? Are you trying to throw us off your scent because you're setting up all these things? And the characters even began to question it. Most people don't immediately go and grab everything and try and find ways to fortify things and make devices that could hurt or kill people. The reason is given that she was part of a doomsday cult when she was younger, so survivalism was a huge part of her background. Most people wouldn't have just assumed that, plus most people aren't a part of doomsday cults. So again, that was the filmmaker kind of trying to work around and figure it out. Erin shows how damned if you do, damned if you don't this can be, because by her showing the knowledge she has in her background, she immediately becomes a suspect for both the characters in the film and the audience. When she explains things, it doesn't really alleviate suspicion from her. Everybody's just like, okay, that's kind of weird. See where this goes. Also the joke made by plenty of fans, non-fans, and even in some movies is, have these people ever seen a horror movie before? While you'd be really hard-pressed to find a horror movie that exists in a universe where no other horror movies do, I can't think of a single example, I just wouldn't rule one out. This is where the super obsessed nerdy horror guy comes in, and I say guy because it's normally a guy. I think the only example I can think of female was Serial Mom, which wasn't even really a horror movie, it was just more of a dark comedy. When we get somebody like that, they tend to die somewhere in the middle of the pack. The reason being is, well, yeah, they know what's coming and they know what's gonna happen. It doesn't necessarily mean it saves you. You can do everything right and still not survive and have everything not work out for you. While it's a sad statement to make, it unfortunately is the gravity of just life. We can relate to this aspect because most people have probably had a situation where you did absolutely everything right and everything still just fell apart on you. Once again, showing a deeper meaning and philosophy and idea hidden in something that to most people looks totally common and disposable, like a horror movie. So while yes, the bad examples of decision-making in horror films completely outweigh the good, when you take them for what they are and put them in context and realize, even though it's fictional, these are still people. People are flawed, and people will make poor choices, and they will probably continue to make poor choices. This trope becomes a touch more forgivable. While, yeah, it will always be obnoxious to see them run the wrong way, sometimes you're gonna run the wrong way, no matter how smart and well-trained you are. Because as soon as you get smart enough to run the right way, they're gonna make sure they block the right way. Criminals stay criminals by always staying one step ahead of law enforcement and law-abiding citizens. And that is just the horrific reality of life. I originally set out to have this be a tropes that need to die, but now I'm debating because it seems to be almost a hybrid between the two. Yet when it's bad, it's really, really, really freaking bad and overdone and absolutely needs to die. But when it's done well, it's totally a why is this a thing, and it does speak to the human condition. So I'm not really sure where to put this one. So I guess let me know in the comments below, and if I need to retitle it, I'll retitle it. And on that note, because total Debbie Downer apparently, thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this video, please comment, like, subscribe, follow me on social media. All the links are in the description. And if you don't like what you're hearing, please feel free to give me feedback. I did this video because this is what people kept telling me they wanted. If you want something different, I am more than happy to accommodate that. Thank you.